Welcome to this week's Norma Talks. Now, I know the US is just still in the middle of figuring out who's president and who isn't, and which state is this and which state is that. And I know I had a couple of calls with people feeling anxious and didn't know what. We live in Canada, so even though we live in Canada, we can pick up the tension in the collective consciousness for sure. And I had already picked a topic for today. And I also want to say, if you see me winch, I do have a condition. And last night, my left elbow decided it didn't want to work. And it's still not working right. So if I move it the wrong way, it will hurt. And if you see me winch, just know that. But it's just, I just have to put it back. I'm holding it kind of down on my lap, and I do tend to talk with my hands, so I could very easily move it in a different direction. But my topic today is, which psychic system do you use? We have a number of them. And I was doing classes before lockdowns happened on opening up the different systems that we have. And I'm going to go over them and I'm going to talk about them. Now, the most common one, and actually the one we usually shut down first, is our clairvoyance. That's the seeing. A brow chakra is involved with that. And when I was little, I could actually see what people were thinking. Most people hear what people are thinking. I could see it. And I remember when I was looking back that it would be like big block letters. And what happens, of course, people think and say two different things. So I shut that down quite quickly. And that's where the tarot has been great for me, because it gave me something to concentrate on, the pictures, the symbologies and things like that. And it developed the clairvoyance that I had shut down quite early, actually, very early. So the eye system, as I call it, is a little complicated. Most people think that the brow chakra sees, and it just is reported back to the brain, which I call is where the inner eye, ear, nose, mouth reside, right in where the pituitary and the pineal gland are, right in the middle of your head. Now, what I find is that people don't take into consideration is that we actually have screens. You may have a lot of screens. You may have one screen. You may have them in front of you, on top, behind you. I found, because I was reading cards, which was out in front of me, that what I did with my screens was clean them up, and I'll come back to that in just a sec, and decided I wanted them in front, because if I want to see something clairvoyantly, say, I don't want to have to close my eyes. Many of you may have been to see readers or noticed that readers close their eyes. That's because their screen is not out in front of them. So anyway, that is just a one little thing there. But those screens very often don't reflect for the inner eye to see, because the inner eye is the one that actually sees. Because it's full of fear, anxiety, etc., because of what we have seen, maybe in other lifetimes, maybe in other times, when we were children. So I find clairvoyance, yes, it's the one people talk about the most. And it's often the first thing that will go for most of us, because all of us have these systems inside of us. Our psychic system is a natural thing that we are born with. It is not something like our spirituality, our knowing and awareness. We work at that. And some of us are born with it just instinctually because we've worked at it for many lifetimes. But our psychic system is there. We are born and it is operative. So what we tend to do is close it down. And so then we have to have classes to open it back up. So the clairvoyance is the seeing. Clairaudience, hearing. Now I can point it out with my hand. The psychic ear sits down here. If you actually run your hand down from, there's like you can feel your skull. and you go a little deeper, there's a little indentation there usually. And sometimes it's painful, a little painful, or a little painful. It can be very painful. That's your psychic ear, and it's on both sides. And what it does is it hears non-physical sounds. That's its job. It could be a guide, it could be thoughts, it could be all sorts of things. It sends it up to the inner ear, which is again in this little place where all the inner things are, in that pituitary and pineal gland area right in the center of your head. So that is working for you too. On both sides, it comes on up. Now, what happens very often is that because we're not listening, the psychic ears, because all these parts of ourselves, I mean, whether you call them aspects or parts, whatever, want to do their job. So often what they do is try and move into the physical ear. And often people who have ear issues, very often that's one of the things that has happened, that the psychic ears are not being attended to. So they kind of want to do it. So they kind of push in onto the physical, and that can create all sorts of havoc. So just be aware of that. If you have a lot of ear issues, you may want to check is your psychic ear in the place where it needs to be, and that it is working quite well. Now, another one, and I have to tell you the story of how I found this, and that's the psychic nose. A couple of things about that are quite interesting. I used to produce psychic fairs many years ago, and I had a gal that helped me with bookkeeping, and I would give her the contracts to read. And one day she came out of the office and she said to me, "You know, Norma, this smells fishy to me. I want you to look at this. It just doesn't smell right." And what that did was trigger my awareness of a psychic nose. And then I did more research within my own system, asking questions of different parts of myself. And sure enough, the psychic nose actually right where my bridge of my glasses is situated. And if you look at a lot of pictures of gurus and things from India, you'll find that's very often where they'll have a bright yellow color depicting a chakra there. But actually, and they call it the third eye, but actually I found the third eye's higher. It's a little higher, and I have an indentation up there where my third eye is. So it's like, again, that's something that might be being a little, they knew something was there, but they didn't realize it was the psychic nose. Now, what is the psychic nose is about smells. And sometimes when I'm doing my transformation work, it'll be like, oh, what is that smell? And it can smell like a swamp. You know how swamps don't move and they get very rancid, I think the word is. And so it's like, very often it's like, oh, that, you know, my psychic nose is kicking in here on what's going on. Some people have incredible noses, not only physical noses, but psychic noses. Now, I often tell the story of and I've told this story, and I think on another video before, a cousin of mine in New Zealand worked for a bank, and she could expose people who were being fraudulent. And I happened to be visiting when she was teaching a group of people about how to do this, because her rate was really, really high. And she said, I'm having trouble because, and so I said, well, how do you know if somebody's not being truthful, or how do you know that it's not working? And she said, doesn't smell right, Norma. And I said, oh, you have a strong psychic nose. Most people don't. So, okay, you have to find out what's their psychic ability. Does it look wrong? Does it sound wrong? Does it taste wrong? Well, because we've got smelling. Does it taste wrong, which we haven't touched into yet? And it was like, oh, she hadn't thought that her own ability of the psychic smell was what was pointing out the fraudulent stuff. And there's many people out there that just say, well, I don't know, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't smell right, it doesn't taste right. And excuse me. So just be aware that now the nose, as I said, is right here. And it sends the invitation. Yeah, the invitation. The information, I'm a little tired because of my arm. I didn't sleep well last night, so I apologize. The information to the inner nose. Imagine that. We have a whole system going on in our head. And I'm going to come back to that system in a minute. Clear taste, mouth. It sits at the back of your mouth. If you put your tongue all the way back, it actually goes right back. And if those are people who have studied with me or done transformation work with me, I always talk about an upper lip chakra. And that goes right through into your psychic mouth, through the psychic mouth. It supports the nose, it supports the throat, but it really does work with the psychic mouth. And you can touch that. It also sends the information directly to the inner mouth. So I have to tell you another story. Years ago, when I was studying with a teacher on different systems, and that was the first time I heard about the inner eye, ear, nose, and mouth, and we were exploring about it. One of the ladies in the group was saying, you know, mine was like the old phone system. And if many of you are not going to remember this, but they used to pull out a cord and put the cord in over here, and then this cord and that goes over there. And the phone ladies that worked in the phone things, they did that. And in her head, that's what she had. And she had to remodernize that. She had to make it more modern. And so that everyone also gets the information. So no one is ever more or less. They're all equal. So you've got inner eye, ear, nose, and mouth all working equally. But there's one more point, and this is where most people work, because you can shut down your eyes, you can shut down your nose, you can shut down your mouth, you can shut down your ears, but the intuition comes in from your aura and through your chakras, rises up through the energy into this main station, you might say. This whole inner working that you have. The only trouble is with that, and I find over and over again, people don't always know if it is theirs or someone else's. And so consequently, that inner system gets confused. And one of the things I find is really important that I teach my students, and I deal with myself, of course, is this mine or is this somebody else's? If it's mine, it's impertinent to me and I can act on it. I just discover so much in my work that people are picking up things all the time thinking it's theirs and has nothing to do with them at all. So it is really important to know where your aura is. It's important to have all your chakra system working so the energy is flowing up and down so that you're connected to the earth and to up high, so that your system becomes aware, because that energy that comes up through you is what feeds and supports your whole inner eye, ear, nose, mouth. And then that intuition is added. So it's quite a system. It's quite a system. And excuse me. Now, let's just talk about the clairvoyant that never loses. I blocked mine out, and that's why the tarot was so important to me and still is to this day. But some people are born with it and they keep it forever. And that is the natural thing. That is natural. And because I had to reopen all of my sensors, is that, excuse me again, I just have to have a sip of water here, is because when we block down, we're not accessing that information at all. Now, I began to learn a lot of this and access this in my journey of spiritual philosophical growth. And because I had the tarot as a place where my psychic muscle could begin to work, where I not only was learning how to read, I was learning a philosophy. And I still believe that it is the philosophy that we have that is so important. That it's still the connection that we have to source energy, that loving energy that loves us. So often in my transformation work, I am working to have people love themselves, have value themselves. All the things I had to learn, but it's over and over. I just thought it was me because of my childhood, because of how I was responded to things. But my desire to be connected got me through all that. But people who come in to see me very often don't even realize that they're not loving themselves. And it is so, so important. So just to kind of revamp was, the title is, which psychic system do you use? Because you'll use one, even if it's your intuition. But you can access all of them. All of them can be there to aid you and guide you, and be aware of that. So, as usual, I want to thank you for listening, and I trust this opens up, again, a different understanding or a different awareness. I just want to thank you for pressing the subscribe button and pressing the likes and making the comments. I really appreciate that. I also want to remind you that you can sign up for my newsletter, and my new newsletter is just out through my website. And if you signed up in the next few days, I'll just automatically send you the newsletter via your email address, which comes in, because you get on my email list. I email one out once a month. Sometimes I do a little talking splurb as well, which I did this month. Other times it is basically what I'm doing, what's available, what specials are on, etc. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you so that you understand that you are probably more, much more than you think you are. So have a good week. Enjoy what you're doing. And if you are in the US, you have my prayers, believe me. Just hang in there.